Hello, in this video my goal is that at the end you will be able to compare the popularity of the term or the concept of leadership versus other topics that can be searched at the moment. You may be asking yourself, but what a silly question, right? Because how can leadership not be a popular topic? But of course, we have to keep in mind that if you're watching this video, it's because you're interested in leadership and it's easy for you to project your interests and think that everybody's interests are similar to yours. So just to try to nuance a little bit this bias that you and I may have because we both like or are passionate about the topic of leadership, we're going to try to get a sense of how current this topic is based on what the searches are or how often this term appears in Google searches, which is probably not the most accurate or the most valid way to measure it, but it's a quick and convenient way to do it. So I've put you on Google Trends, the leadership terms in Spanish and in English, and as you can see, taking into account that Google in 2016 and in 2022 has introduced a change in how it processes or analyzes data, so that even though we see a continuous series and we tend to interpret it as a continuous series, there's probably some break points that maybe we shouldn't interpret all of this as exactly the same points where they hook up. Apart from this, and considering that this won't affect the final results too much, you can see that the popularity of the searches in 2004 has been falling until 2010 or so, and from there it has stabilized with its fluctuations in the dates, but remains at a fairly constant level. Obviously, it is not surprising to find that the searches that are done with the English term are much larger or more in quantity than those done with the Spanish search term, but at the end it maintains a trend that we could consider to be very similar. If we wanted to put in context, of course, because we've seen the leadership theme and how the leadership theme evolves, but that's either too much or not. What I show you in this slide is comparing the popularity of searches for the concept of leadership versus other topics that probably arouse more passions. I have chosen different sports and the world of cooking, and as you can see, evidently the concept of leadership does not reach the frequency of search that these other terms that I was showing you. If you want as a curiosity or a coincidence, you can see that the peaks of the sports, at least in football and rugby, they are always in September. While in basketball it seems that the peak of basketball comes to be April or May, which is when the peak of soccer goes down, and if you look at the peaks that have the kitchen stuff, it coincides in December. Certainly it does make us think that our frequency of searches in some cases has peaks, but the leadership seems to remain constant. What happens is that a much lower level or much lower than what these other concepts have. We're comparing leadership with totally different topics, and what I've done to you in this slide is to try to compare the term leadership with other terms that probably play in the same league, which is the league of transversal competencies or soft skills. If we compare with teamwork, with problem-solving competency, with the entrepreneurship competency, or with the critical thinking competency, you can see that indeed leadership is probably at a much higher level of intensity than these other competencies that move in similar terms or with similar frequencies. So, maybe from 2022 onwards there's an uptick in entrepreneurship, but maybe it's because of the way Google has made the change to process the data just on this date. And finally, what I show you in this slide is the comparison of different leadership styles to see which ones are the most consulted recently or well with a historical trajectory up to the current moment. It seems that there are two styles or two concepts that stand out a little bit more with respect to the rest, which are transformational and servant leadership. It might be interesting to investigate about its features and its application mode, because they are ones that stand out from the others in terms of the searches that people do in Google. I think at this point in time you are able to compare the number of times that leadership appears in the search strategies or in the search terms in Google. With that, you could draw some conclusions about its popularity, especially compared to other terms, and also with that you could answer that initial question of is leadership really a trending topic nowadays?